singen eigentlich konstant fast. Also jetzt oder letztes singen wir auch ein Lied. Das Lied, das eigentlich die spirituelle Welt beschreibt.
Can we have the small table? It will be more practical. Thank you. Somebody wrote a verse. You can write the last verse. It's 2 actually. I'm gonna read. No, sorry. I just have something else. Oh no, let's take 30. This is a potted. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Prajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana Yamunati Ravanachari Yamunati Ravanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Radha Madhava Radha Madhava Shri Radhe Jaya Radha Madhava Radha Madhava Radha Madhava Shri Radhe Jaya Jaya Prabhupada 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Jaya Prabhupada 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada Jai Om Vishwapad Paramahamsa Parivrajikacharya Stottara Shata Srimad Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Grantara Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai Gaura Premanande Hari Hari Bol. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the camera team. All glories to Sri Guru and Gauranga. Hare Krishna. Vielleicht das Problem bei mir, hä?
Ja, vielleicht.
Okay. Der Vorführeffekt. Ich hatte das schon mal gehabt. Das ist irgendwie mit der.
Irgendwo, oder?
Magst du? Probier nochmal. Jetzt habe ich etwas gemacht.
Nice.
Du kannst sonst selber schon. Ich tue den Vers lesen. Du kannst da in die Einstellungen schauen. Es geht schon nochmal, aber manchmal bei der Einstellung ist es mit dem Bildschirm nicht so. Ja, die Einstellungen stimmen nicht manchmal.
Hast du gut
da. Irgendwie, wenn du das einsteckst, kannst du da, siehst du nachher die Auswahl auch von dem. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam namaskritya narang cheva narottamang deving saraswating vyasang tato jayamudiraye nashta prayeshu abhadreshu nityang bhagavata sevaya bhagavati uttamashloke bhaktir bhavati naishtiki. So we are continuing reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, canto number 4, and today we will read text 30, which is on the board, which has a purport, and then we will also read text 31, which is the last verse of this canto, and which doesn't have a purport. But then we can conclude this canto, and tomorrow, you will give tomorrow? Markishanam Prabhu, he can start the new canto. I was just curious to know when did we actually start the 4th canto, so I went online to see if I can find some sources, and on YouTube actually, fortunately, Keshava Madhava Prabhu, he was living in the temple at the time, you remember he took live videos often, so I could find 4.1.2, which was in February 2020. That was just before COVID lockdown came. So we've been studying now this canto for 4 years. And this canto, actually the Srimad Bhagavatam, it has 12 cantos, 12 parts, and total 18,000 verses. And the Srimad Bhagavatam literally means the beautiful narrations about God and His devotees. And in this book you find many stories which are actually history. It's also called the Bhagavat Purana. Purana means old, means history. And in the Srimad Bhagavatam we find many histories about God and His devotees. And so there's 12 cantos. And the 4th canto, if we look at Srila Prabhupada's translation, is probably the 2nd largest canto. The 10th canto is the most extensive one. Of course, it has the most chapters also, very elaborate. And the 10th canto is also the heart of the Srimad Bhagavatam. And then the 2nd canto is the 2nd voluminous canto after the 10th. Sorry, the 3rd canto. And the 2nd canto comes just after that. So many chapters. So we're going to read text 30. We can recite together. Shri Shuka Vacha Itanam Yatama Mantriya Ityanam Yatama Mantriya Viduro Gachasa Vayam Viduro Gachasavayam Swanam Didrikshu Prayayo Swanam Didrikshu Prayayo Gyatinam Nirvritashayaha Gyatinam Nirvritashayaha Ityannam yatam amantriya Ityannam yatam amantriya Viduru gacha savayam Svanam didrikshu prayayo Gyatinam nirvritashayah. Yeah, please chant. Sri Sukha Vacha Dityanam Yatam Amantriya Please, we need some time here. If more can chant. Jetzt geht's. Musst umstellen.
Svanam didikshu prayayav Yatinam nivritashayah Sri Sukha Vacha Ityanam yatama mantrya Viduro gajasavayam Svanam ditrikshu prayayo Yatinam nirvritashayah
Now the TV crew has to chant, otherwise now nothing is going anymore. Okay, word for word, translation. Shri Shuk, und sonst müssen wir es halt ohne machen. Schade, aber what to do. Shri Shuka Vacha. Shri Shukadev Goswami said, Iti thus, Anamya, offering obeisances, Tam unto Maitreya, Amantriya, taking permission, Viduraha, Vidura, Gacha Savayam, the city of Hastinapur. It's interesting how Gacha Savayam is the word for Hastinapur. Gacha is Gajendra. We know the king of the elephants. So Gaja and Hasti, they are two different words for elephant. And apparently that city was sometimes called Hastinapur and sometimes Gaja Savayam. And of course we know why, because this city was so opulent that there were many elephants situated in that city. That's why it was called Gaja Savayam. Svanam, own. Didrikshuhu, desiring to see. Prayayo, left that place. Gyatinam, of his kinsmen. Nirvrita ashayaha, free from material desires. Translation, and purport by His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Shukadev Goswami continued. Vidura thus offered obeisances unto the great sage Maitreya and, taking his permission, started for the city of Hastinapur to see his own kinsmen, although he had no material desires. Purport. When a saintly person wants to see his kinsmen, he has no material desire to see them. He simply wants to give them some instructions so that they can benefit. Vidura belonged to the royal family of the Kauravas, and although he knew that all the family members were destroyed at the battle of Kurukshetra, he nonetheless wanted to see his elder brother Dhritarashtra, to see if he could deliver Dhritarashtra from the clutches of Maya. When a great saintly person like Vidura sees his relatives, he desires only to deliver them from the clutches of Maya. Vidura thus offered his respectful obeisances to his spiritual master and departed for the city of Hastinapur, the kingdom of the Kauravas. Then I will just read text 31. Etatya shrinuyat rajan ragyam haryarpitatmanam ayurdhanam yashasvasti gatimaishvaryam apnuyat. Translation: O king, those who hear these topics about kings who are completely surrendered to the Supreme Personality of Godhead obtain without difficulty a long life, wealth, good reputation, good fortune, and ultimately the opportunity to return home back to Godhead. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports of the 4th canto, 31st chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled Narada Instructs the Prachetas. Sundar Jagannath, ich bräuchte den Computer und trotzdem, ich weiß jetzt nicht, wo an ist. Vielleicht kannst du mir einfach den Computer geben. Om Agyana Timirandhasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandehang Shri Guru Shri Utapada Kamalang Shri Gurun Vaishnavangscha Sri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatang Vitang Tang Sajivam Sadvaitang Savadutang Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitangscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Rama Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Bevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Shiva Sadi Gaura Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharini Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pashyatade Shatarini. Hare Krishna, thank you so much for coming to today's Srimad Bhagavatam class. So today we're going to end the 4th canto, which is a very rare opportunity, and it's very nice that today we have the television crew with us. So We prepared some presentation, and hopefully by the time I will be ready to present, will be Gott jetzt. Gott. Ja, das ist gut. Okay, so very good. Krishna is always testing. But anyway, even if it wouldn't have worked, then we just take it as Krishna's arrangement and we speak without the presentation. So here in this verse we hear how Vidura, he's offering his obeisances to Maitreya and he's taking his permission and he goes to Hastinapur. And with this, and of course the 31st verse, the 4th canto ends, but not only the 4th canto, but the discussion between Vidura and Maitreya. So we will also especially speak about the different conversations in Srimad Bhagavatam today. I've already mentioned what is the Srimad Bhagavatam. It's the history of God's activities which involve his devotees. A Purana, there's many Puranas in the Vedic scriptures from India, and Puranas are histories. So in India, and not only in India, but in our society, they are accepted as the history of the world. And not only this world, but the whole universe. And not only this universe, but the whole creation. Now, we come together every day here to study Srimad Bhagavatam. I will speak in a way also that maybe, of course, it will not be shown, the whole class will not be shown in the television. But since we have some guests here, I also want to elaborate a little bit in a way that they can understand what we are doing. So we are studying every day Srimad Bhagavatam. Like you go to a university and you study some books, or in school you study books. But it's very obvious then when somebody comes for the first time, we can notice that this is a little bit different than in university. We chant a lot of prayers, we sing in front of, before we start the class. And that reveals a very important aspect of the study of Srimad Bhagavatam. We say we study Srimad Bhagavatam, but it's not really an intellectual study only, but it's a devotional study. Why do we study Srimad Bhagavatam? What are we doing actually here? We're trying to purify our consciousness, which at the moment is completely connected with matter. Our consciousness, which is coming from the soul, is flowing through the senses in the material world. And we are basically experiencing mainly matter. But the scriptures, the Vedic scriptures, they are written down in Sanskrit, they tell us that there is also a spiritual reality. So there is a reality which is beyond the material reality. And this reality we cannot perceive. But the scriptures, they are very kind. They give us information about this kind of reality. And the scriptures not only tell us that there is a spiritual world, but they say that actually we belong to the spiritual world. Now, at the moment, due to our own independent desire and choice, we came to the world of matter because we wanted to enjoy. Independently of God. We wanted to be the center of attention, and we wanted to gratify our own desires. And that's why we had to come in a world of matter, because the world of spirit is not possible to do that. In the world of spirit, everybody is completely conscious that I'm just a small part belonging to God, and therefore I'm meant to serve God. And the scriptures tell us that actually the goal of life, especially of human life, is meant to go back to the spiritual world, which is the kingdom of God. And for this then they give the instructions how to do that, and the whole yoga philosophy comes. Many people, they know yoga nowadays, but yoga actually means connection with God. It's not primarily about physical fitness, that is just a byproduct, but it's mainly about connecting to God. And then the scriptures give different methods of yoga. There is dhyana yoga, there is karma yoga, there is jnana yoga, and then there is bhakti yoga. And bhakti yoga is described as being the ultimate yoga. Every yoga ultimately leads to bhakti yoga, and every yoga is based on bhakti yoga. Every yoga is based on some element of bhakti. And what is bhakti? Bhakti means the yoga of love, that one actually loves God. And that is the true connection with the personality. We know there is different ways how we can connect. Kannst du mir vielleicht sagen, zum Aufhören mit dem? Oder die Türe zu machen? There's different ways how we can connect with people. And mostly in this material world, we connect with people on the basis of desire. I connect with you because you seem to be a very qualified person and I want to have a friendship with you, so I can benefit from your association. Or I fall in love with someone and I want to have a romantic, sensual relationship which then gives me pleasure. So that is one way how we can connect, but in the scriptures it is said that the best way to connect is by love. And love means that one simply wants to please the other person. So bhakti yoga means the yoga in which we try to connect to Krishna by loving him. And how do we manifest that love? By serving him, by giving him pleasure. Like the whole morning what we do, we sing and dance. Do we sing for ourselves? No, we sing for the Lord. We try to please him. We try to say, oh, you're so wonderful. You're such a wonderful person. You have so many wonderful qualities, and I want to express my gratitude to you. I want to express my love. Bhakti yoga then is described in the scriptures, the whole process. And one process is the study of Srimad Bhagavatam. In yoga we always try to engage our whole being. We try to engage our body, we try to engage our thoughts, we try to engage our emotions, our desires, and we try to engage our words. Everything, that's yoga, to engage the whole existence. And therefore we study Srimad Bhagavatam to engage our thoughts, to engage our intellect. But why do we treat the Srimad Bhagavatam in such a way? You know, we are praying and we are in a very humble mood, we trying to study. Because our goal to understand God and love God cannot be achieved by intellectual exercise. And this should always be understood when we study Srimad Bhagavatam. It's not that now I'm going to sit down and by reading and very much, exhausting my intelligence, I will be able to understand God. That is not the way. The way is that by, in a devotional mood, studying Srimad Bhagavatam, God will reveal through the words of Srimad Bhagavatam. But it's not my endeavor primarily which will reveal Krishna, but Krishna, when he sees we are sincerely endeavoring in a humble way, in a devotional way, in a prayerful way, then God will reveal through the words. And therefore, when we hear Srimad Bhagavatam, each person will also understand what is said in a different way. Because everyone has an individual consciousness. So some they will understand more, and some they will understand less. Why? Because we believe that the consciousness is the driving force. Like if you had a cat in here, a cat can also hear some noise, but it will not be able to understand anything. Why? Because the consciousness is to a greater extent covered. So we all try to study Srimad Bhagavatam in that mood, and we know it means to study every day in a very dedicated way, and by this we will slowly understand Krishna more and more. And I'm just saying this because now with ending the 4th canto, I was reflecting about how much did I actually take out of this 4th canto? How much did I really engage in this process? And I had to realize that it's quite sobering how much I really engaged and how much I really tried to take this opportunity very serious, be there every morning. And so I'm mentioning this now. What I thought, what we can do, and before we go into that, I want to read one quote which will also explain a little bit what Srimad Bhagavatam actually is. This is a quote from Ravi M. Gupta and Kenneth R. Welpe. This is Radhikaram Prabhu and Krishna Kshetra Maharaj. So, of course, they are great scholars also in the academic field. And they, I don't know exactly, I think the Bhagavad Purana selected readings, they published this book, I guess, and they made this statement here. We have alluded to the Bhagavat's identity as a Purana, Bhagavat meaning Srimad Bhagavatam. An important feature of which is its multi-level dialogical structure. The layered arrangement of dialogues in which a speaker, typically Shuka, the main reciter, addressing his interlocutor, King Parikshit, quotes an earlier speaker, for example, Narada addressing King Yudhishthir, Parikshit's granduncle in a dialogue understood to have taken place earlier and elsewhere, who may in turn quote yet another speaker. 2 or 3 such layers are typically operative simultaneously. The compounding of voices serve to strengthen the message delivered. And second, one is left with the sense that one cannot, and indeed need not, trace out the origin of the message. So basically what is said here is that Srimad Bhagavatam is a very complex network of conversations which are like interwoven in each other. And it's so complex that they say it should give you the it basically should convey to you that don't worry who says what so much, but it should tell you that the message in itself is very precious and timeless, and it has been transmitted over many different generations and through time and place. Jai Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Mai ki jai, Shri Shri Gaur Nitai ki jai. I will try to make it as brief as possible. So I will actually try, I'm endeavoring here in a little way to at least give us some systematic understanding of these dialogues. And I was inspired because many months ago I already started to work on a chart which was for my personal studies, because I often lost track. Who is speaking now? What's going on? And then I thought, let me make a chart in order for me to understand. But here in this chart, I made it simplify. I simplified it because the whole 12 cantos will be too much. So basically, I focused on until we end of 4th canto. And what I tried to show is that there is different. How is it now? What I tried to show is these conversations, before we said it's like a network, interwoven network of different dialogues. But here I will show different layers of dialogues, and also maybe we can just start with the first one. What is the first layer of the Srimad Bhagavatam? Who is speaking the first? Yes, and before that, I mean, not in a dialogue, but who is actually writing the Srimad Bhagavatam? Vyasadeva. So Vyasadeva, Ganesh is writing, and Vyasadeva is dictating. So it's also a dialogue, actually. And what I also tried to do back then is, because we are so Western academically influenced, we always try to put it in a context of time and place. So here I will just put it in a geographical context, and the time I will mention in the end. So Vyasadeva, he compiled, or he dictated the Srimad Bhagavatam in a cave in Badrinath. It's flickering, huh? Yeah, that will be good. You can see it? Yes. So I'm just trying to give you a little bit. Who knew where Srimad Bhagavatam was compiled? Somebody has been to that place? You have been? Wow, nice. So that's the Himalayas in India. We all know about these mountains, the biggest mountain range in the whole world. And there is a cave in Badrinath. It's still there, you can go there, the cave of Vedavyas. And what I want to show you here also is that you can always take a little bit reference of New Delhi, which we all know. And many of these places are actually around New Delhi. So that's where Vyasadeva, he compiled the Srimad Bhagavatam. And he, of course, when we speak about where is Vyasadeva involved, he's involved from 1.1.1 till the very last verse, because he compiled it. But then we see, just very soon, he starts to narrate the conversation between Sutta Goswami and the sages in Naimisharanya. One thing I want to mention here is that, of course, it's very logical that if Vyasadeva is speaking about Sutta Goswami and the sages, it must have happened before. Otherwise, it will not be possible for him. But of course, we also know, and actually I'm not sure about it, that Vyasadeva is Trikalagya. He sees the future, the past, and the present. Means he's also speaking about the future in the Srimad Bhagavatam. So I cannot completely confirm that this is actually the case, but in a logical way we can conclude like this. Naimisharanya is a very holy place. They say it's the center of the universe. And as you can see, before we had Badrinath somewhere in the northeast, and this is now southeast of New Delhi. Naimisharanya Tirth. You can go there also. So at this place, around 5,000 years ago, many sages came together and they knew that a time is coming which will be very difficult for humanity, so let us perform a sacrifice. And in this sacrifice, Sutta Goswami, one of the most exalted sages, appeared and he started to speak Srimad Bhagavatam. Srimad Bhagavatam is not just, it's not restricted to one personality, but Srimad Bhagavatam is actually a history which can be related somehow in different ways. It can sometimes be more condensed, sometimes more expanded, and it can be spoken by different people in different times. And then the next, so that is here, as we can see, from already the fifth verse of the first chapter, first canto, till the last verse. So we can say, like Devashri Radhika said, basically we are speaking about the dialogue or the conversation between Sutta Goswami and the sages. That is the first main conversation which is told in Srimad Bhagavatam. And which one is the next? Oh, yeah, before we go into the major next conversation, what Sutta Goswami explains is based on the questions the sages, or Shonaka Rishi, who is representing all the sages, is asking. He wants to know what, now Krishna left the planet, what will happen? How will we perform Dharma? And we remember then some chapters in the first canto, they very nicely describe the supremacy of Bhakti Yoga, devotional service. But then later on, he starts to give history. He starts to give history, and he speaks about after the Kurukshetra war. He speaks, and he gives again different conversation. Krishna is speaking to the Pandavas are speaking, Kunti is speaking, and of course ultimately it will come to Parikshit. So he will give the whole background, after the war of Kurukshetra, how the Pandavas, what they did, what happened, what Krishna did, and then ultimately leading up to the point Krishna leaving the planet, the Pandavas retiring, and Parikshit Maharaj taking up the kingdom, the role of the monarch. And once he has explained this naturally, just here we have these two places, Kurukshetra and Hastinapur. And that's quite important now, of course, since we have been speaking about Hastinapur in this verse. Oops. Somehow I cannot zoom in, I'm sorry. This is Hastinapur. You can see it now. And it's very close to New Delhi. So Hastinapur was the capital of the Kuru dynasty. And that's where many of these incidents happened, and some of them here in Kurukshetra. I don't know why I can't move it. Previously I was able to move it. Maybe I can just go in here. Anyway, I'm losing otherwise the track. So these conversations told by Sutta Goswami are mainly in Hastinapur and Kurukshetra. And then of course Parikshit Maharaj, he goes out and he sees the bull which has been injured by the Shudra, so that's happening all outside. And then what will be the next bigger conversation? Parikshit Shukadev. And this is the actual, we often see, I will also show this picture, Shukadev Goswami and Parikshit Maharaj, and this has happened in Shukratal. Shukratal, as you can see here, is here, and it's very close to Hastinapur. Why? Because Parikshit Maharaj was the king of Hastinapur, and when he was cursed to die within 7 days, he sat down in Shukratal at the bank of the Ganges, and that's where Parikshit, he sat down, and Shukadev Goswami and many other sages came to enlighten him before his departure, before his death. Here we have a very beautiful painting of this scene. This is the bank of the Ganges in Shukratal, and Parikshit Maharaj, who took the dress of a renunciate, he left his royal dress, and many sages assembled to bless him in his last days of his life. And then Shukadev Goswami came, and actually Parikshit Maharaj, he asked him, please help me in these last days of my life to enlighten me so that I can leave this body in a Krishna conscious way. And this conversation is starting from the 19th chapter and goes up to the 12th canto, 6th chapter. So it's also very extensive. It's mainly almost covering the whole Srimad Bhagavatam except these few chapters in the beginning, which give the philosophy of Bhakti Yoga by Sutta Goswami, the foundation, and also the background, the historical background. And then later on in the 12th canto, some last chapters which are not connected with this conversation anymore. And Shukadev Goswami tells to Parikshit Maharaj different kinds of conversations. Why do we always have conversations? Because we try to understand who is Krishna, who is God, where does he live, what does he do, and in order to do that, what are his qualities? In order to do that, he's quoting other living entities who speak about that in order to bring out this information. So there's many conversations. For example, and this is very important to connect to this verse, Vidura, Dhritarashtra and Duryodhana. You remember that conversation? So here we hear, in this book today, in the verse we heard how Vidura, he was with Maitreya Muni, and then he's going back to Hastinapur. And this was somehow a culmination of many events connected to Vidura, which are described also in Srimad Bhagavatam. And it begins by Vidura being insulted by Duryodhana. We remember how Dhritarashtra, the king, his son Duryodhana, he was very evil, and Dhritarashtra didn't stop the evil plans of his son. And Vidura at one point, just before the Kurukshetra war, he told Dhritarashtra, you should abandon your son. He's no good for anyone. He's just creating problems. You should not listen to him, you should reject him and abandon him. And at that point, Duryodhana, he insulted Vidura as being the Dasi Putra, the son of a maidservant or a slave, you can say. I'm not going to go into the whole history about Vidura and Pandu and Dhritarashtra, you know that history. But that's how Vidura decided on the spot, I will leave this kingdom. He left his bow and he walked out of the house. And then he was on pilgrimage through whole of India. And in this connection, in order to also explain how Vidura met Maitreya, Krishna and Uddhava's conversation is given. When Krishna left the planet, he spoke to Uddhava. And who was close by to that conversation? Maitreya Rishi. Maitreya was close by, and then Krishna left the planet. Uddhava left Prabhas Kshetra, in close to Dwaraka, and Uddhava was so how to say, heartbroken, so devastated, that he went to Vrindavan. And in Vrindavan, he met Vidura, and Vidura asked him to please enlighten him. And Uddhava told Vidura, you please go to Maitreya Rishi. And this is the conversation which is ending today, which has begun. It's actually happening in Haridwar, this conversation. I can show you that. Haridwar is also north of New Delhi. It's not as north as Badrinath, but it's at the foothills of the Himalayas. And that's where Maitreya was staying as a sage. He was performing austerities, and Vidura went to him. Here is a beautiful painting also of Vidura and Maitreya. Maitreya in saffron, and Vidura very humble, listening. This conversation started in the 3rd canto, 5th chapter, and is ending with this verse today, 4th canto, 31st chapter, 3rd text. And this is the 3rd most extensive conversation in the Srimad Bhagavatam. So we can see how important that conversation is, and we can reflect. The time is over, I will not go into that, but in the 4th canto we heard many stories about Shiva and Sati. We heard about Dhruva Maharaj, we heard about Prithu Maharaj, we heard about Prachinabarhi. So many stories were told by Maitreya Rishi in order to enlighten us. And now in the 5th canto there will be again Shukadev Goswami, and that's what we heard in the quote. These conversations, when Vidura and Maitreya are speaking, it actually means that Shukadev Goswami is telling this to Parikshit, and at the same time Sutta Goswami is telling this to the sages. So it's always different conversations happening at the same time in different times and places. I will go through that. I just wanted to give some the historical sequence of these conversations, but I will not explain it, there is not much time. But it shows that from this you can see 1, 2, 3, it goes back and forth. So sometimes a story which happened first is told before, and then a story which happened later. And that's why we heard before, it's so difficult to understand sometimes. To us it seems very chaotic, you know. Wow, and now how is it connected? But in this way, if we try to analyze it in a way, it will help us in our study, if we do it in a devotional mood. And just to give the historical background, from the scriptures we know that especially the start of Kali Yuga, which is mentioned again and again, Kali Yuga is one time, like a cycle of time. And in the scriptures this start of Kali Yuga is very clearly described, and that's 3102 years before Christ. And around that time many things happened. The birth of Krishna, they say, see, these are all astronomical calculations they made based on the scriptures, because in the scriptures we find descriptions, and then by astrological calculations they can actually pin down the time, and that's what they came up with. And this is something last to mention which is interesting in this connection, that the Kurukshetra war happened 3067 before Christ, and the departure of Krishna when he left the planet is 3031 before Christ. That's around 35 years after the war, and we know that's confirmed. We know Krishna, he lived 125 years. For us, very difficult to imagine, but at that time people lived much longer, and especially Krishna, he can live eternally. But we hear it also from other personalities. And he was 90 years old when the Kurukshetra war happened, and when he left 35 years later, he was 125 years old, so-called old. And we can also understand from here that Vidura, he just left right before the Kurukshetra war. And he came shortly after the departure of Krishna. So he was on pilgrimage for around 35 years. Then, and his culmination of the pilgrimage came to come back to Hastinapur is after approximately 35 years. I'm not quite sure about one thing, because in the Bhagavatam it is said the departure of Dhritarashtra and how is that? Yeah, the departure of Dhritarashtra comes first, and then the departure of Krishna comes after, but I'm not sure how. That would mean that when Vidura came, he didn't mention to the Pandavas that Krishna already left, because he knew. Because Uddhava, who told Vidura about Krishna's departure and sent him to Maitreya, and then he came to Hastinapur, that means he knew that Krishna left. But in the Bhagavatam it said Dhritarashtra left first, and then after the Pandavas got to know about Krishna's departure. So I'm not sure about this. Maybe we can ask some scholar who can tell us this. So thank you again. I hope this will inspire you in some way to also go deeper in your study of Srimad Bhagavatam. And tomorrow we will have the 5th canto starting with Mahakrishna Prabhu. And maybe there is some comments or questions. Krishna Prema Prabhu, if you like to make some comment. Then let us end, and now we can take breakfast. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai.